How Amelia Earhart stayed calm under pressure. Secrets of an aviation legend. Imagine yourself flying high above the endless Atlantic Ocean. Below, there's nothing but deep, dark water stretching out in every direction. The wind rocks your small plane, the sky is heavy with clouds, and the nearest land is hundreds of miles away. This was the reality that Amelia Earhart faced, not just once, but many times. Yet, what truly set Amelia apart wasn't just her skill as a pilot, but the extraordinary calm she carried with her into every storm. So how did she do it? What was the secret behind Amelia Earhart's unshakable composure under pressure? Amelia often spoke about the power of knowing your purpose. She believed that the hardest part of any great journey was simply deciding to start. Once that choice was made, everything else became a matter of courage and persistence. For her, flying was never just about records or fame. It was about proving something deeper, that women, too, could dare to challenge the sky. When fear whispered in her mind, she reminded herself why she was up there. Not only for her own dreams, but for every woman who had ever dreamed of flying. There's a famous moment when Amelia found herself surrounded by a violent storm. The sky turned black. Rain lashed against the windshield and the plane was tossed around like a leaf. But even then, she didn't panic. Her calm came from a lifetime of preparation. She had studied her maps until they felt like old friends, checked her instruments until she knew every sound and movement, and created careful backup plans for every step of the journey. That quiet confidence, built long before takeoff, allowed her to keep her focus when the wind roared around her. Amelia also understood the danger of letting fear take over. She believed that worry only clouds your judgment and slows your reactions. So when turbulence shook her plane, she would slow her breathing and tell herself to focus only on what was directly in front of her. Just fly the plane 1 minute at a time, she reminded herself. By staying present, she kept her mind from being overwhelmed by endless what-ifs. But Amelia didn't pretend that fear didn't exist. She acknowledged it and then transformed it into fuel. Instead of freezing, she used fear to sharpen her awareness and keep her alert. In her own words, courage is the price that life exacts for granting peace. Real peace, she believed, comes not from avoiding danger but from facing it head-on. Perhaps Amelia's greatest lesson was accepting that some things are simply beyond our control. Whether mechanical failures, unexpected challenges, these could happen to anyone. Rather than fighting against uncertainty, she focused her energy only on what she could control: her preparation, her decisions, and her mindset. And she placed her trust in the rest, knowing that no pilot, no matter how skilled, could control the sky itself. In the end, Amelia Earhart's story isn't just about flying. It's about the human spirit's ability to stay calm in the face of fear. It teaches us that when life shakes us like a storm, we must remember why we started. Prepare as best we can, breathe deeply, and keep moving forward. And perhaps most importantly, we must accept that while we can't control everything, we can always control how we respond. So, the next time you find yourself under pressure, think of Amelia high above the Atlantic, guiding her small plane through darkness and wind. Think of her steady breath, her focused mind, and her quiet courage. And remember her words: decide to act, the rest is courage. When we look back on Amelia Earhart's life, it becomes clear that her calmness wasn't something she was born with. It was something she built, choice by choice, flight by flight, mistake by mistake. As a young woman, Amelia wasn't fearless. In fact, she once confessed that the first time she ever saw an airplane, she didn't even find it interesting. But the day she felt the wind on her face from the cockpit seat, something inside her shifted. She realized that courage isn't the absence of fear, it's stepping forward in spite of it. This is what made Amelia so special. She didn't deny the risk or pretend it wasn't there. Instead, she embraced it as part of the adventure. Every time she took off, she knew that things could go wrong, and sometimes they did. But she also knew that living fully meant accepting uncertainty as a companion, not an enemy. One of the most powerful examples of her mindset came during her historic solo flight across the Atlantic. In 1932, about halfway through, she encountered icy conditions. The plane began to shake, the altimeter needle danced unpredictably, and for a moment, even she felt fear gripping at the edges of her thoughts. But Amelia didn't let that fear take over. Instead, she focused on what she knew: trust your instruments, correct gently, keep breathing, and keep going. It was this mental discipline to see the fear, acknowledge it, and gently set it aside that carried her across an ocean that had claimed so many lives before. Amelia's philosophy extended beyond flying. In her writings and speeches, she often reminded people that daring isn't about seeking danger for its own sake. It's about being willing to risk failure in order to do something meaningful. She saw calmness under pressure not as a gift from the heavens, but as a choice we make every day to center ourselves in purpose, to trust our preparation and to act even when we feel unsure. She also talked about the importance of accepting mistakes. In one of her letters, she wrote that mistakes were inevitable and the real test wasn't whether you could avoid them, but whether you could learn, adjust, and keep moving. Even when faced with criticism and doubt from others, she kept her focus on what mattered most to her. That inner clarity shielded her from the noise outside. As her fame grew, so did the pressures. Reporters followed her everywhere, newspapers questioned whether a woman belonged in the cockpit, and sponsors worried about the risks. But Amelia kept her composure by staying deeply connected to her mission. Every flight, every speech, every new challenge was rooted in the same purpose: to inspire others, especially women, to dream bigger than society said they could. In the final chapters of her life, when she planned her most ambitious journey to fly around the world, Amelia knew the stakes were higher than ever. She was honest about the danger in a letter she left behind. She wrote that she understood the risks, but felt at peace with them because she was following her calling. Her words echo even today: "Please know I am quite aware of the hazards. Women must try to do things as men have tried. When they fail, their failure must be a challenge to others." And perhaps this is the heart of her calmness: acceptance. Amelia Earhart accepted that life wouldn't always go as planned, that fear would visit her cockpit, and that sometimes, despite everything, the wind might not be on her side. But she chose to keep flying anyway. When we step back and reflect on her journey, it becomes clear that what Amelia teaches us isn't reserved for pilots or adventurers. It's for all of us, anyone who has ever faced doubt, fear, or uncertainty. Her story invites us to ask ourselves, what is my why? How can I prepare better? Not to control everything, but to feel steady when storms come and when fear arrives. Can I see it not as a stop sign, but as a sign I'm on a path worth walking? So, as you listen to Amelia's story today, take a moment to breathe deeply. Think about the challenges in your own life. Remember, it's not about never feeling afraid, it's about what you choose to do next. Decide to act. The rest, as she said, is courage, and that courage doesn't always look dramatic. Sometimes it's as quiet as steady hands on the controls of a small plane, thousands of feet above the Atlantic, with the wind howling all around. As we come to the end of Amelia Earhart's remarkable journey, think for a moment about the world she lived in. A world where people told her again and again, flying isn't for women. You might get hurt, you'll never succeed, and yet, each time, she chose not to fight those voices with anger, but to answer them with quiet action. She didn't try to silence the storm outside, she learned to quiet the storm within. Imagine what it took to sit alone in a small cockpit, hearing only the hum of the engine and the occasional crackle of the radio, knowing that one wrong calculation could mean the end, yet she still chose to keep going, 1 mile at a time. It makes you wonder, what could each of us achieve if we stopped waiting for fear to disappear? What dreams are we putting on hold, hoping that someday we'll feel ready or brave enough? Amelia reminds us that readiness doesn't always come first. Sometimes the decision to act must come before the courage fully arrives. Even in her final flight, the one whose ending remains a mystery, she left behind something powerful. Not just a record or a news headline, but a living message. That the measure of a life isn't how long it lasts, but what it stands for. Hers stood for daring, for hope, and for reminding us all that it's okay to be afraid as long as we keep moving forward. As you watch this video today, maybe there's a part of your life where you've been holding back. Maybe there's a project you haven't started, a trip you've been dreaming of, or a conversation you've been afraid to have. Ask yourself, what is your why? What is so meaningful to you that it's worth stepping into uncertainty? For because fear never really disappears, even the bravest people feel it. The difference is, they don't let it decide for them. They breathe, steady their hands, remember why they started, and keep flying.